You are listening to the 90 Days Later podcast with Anna Charles, episode 88. Welcome to the 90 Days Later podcast, where I show you how to stop over drinking in 90 days without missing out on life. If you're not an alcoholic, but fed up with saying yes to a drink when you mean to say no, you're in the right place. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. All right, today I want to talk about health and drinking. Now, it seems that every few weeks an article appears in the paper saying alcohol is good for you, or alcohol is bad for you, or alcohol is good for you in moderation, or as long as it's red wine, and on it goes. And many people tell me their primary reason for changing their relationship with alcohol is from health fears, right? They're worrying about their health. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, health. Now, what do you think of when you think health when it comes to drinking, right? When it pertains to drinking? Maybe you think about your liver or your blood pressure. It's that kind of thing, right? It's the physical stuff. But really, that's only one part of it. So today, I want to talk also about your emotional health and why that matters so much as we work to transform our relationships with alcohol. So let's get cracking. First, I want to talk about how we get into this situation in the first place. Perhaps that's a question you have asked yourself a number of times, right? Where we get to this position where we're worried about our physical health when it comes to our drinking, and yet we still feel that we just can't quite figure it out, right? We just still can't do what we think we should do, what we know we should do. I mean, there we're talking about looking after our physical health. Now, this is not a trifling topic. This is one of immense importance to our lives. And it's in fact one of the top reasons why people tell me they want to transform their relationship with alcohol. I just want to be healthy, they tell me, or I just want to be able to see my children grow up. Or perhaps they say, I only have one body, one life. I want to be healthy. Now, these are the things that I do hear a lot. And all of them sound great, right? They seem to make sense. But the problem is that when we're facing the desire to drink, right, when you've had a stressful day, and when you're at the pub with a group of friends who are drinking, or maybe you're at home and you've just put the kids to bed, and you just want to relax and you need to relax now, as in right now, then your desire to be healthy in that moment really isn't that compelling. It might sound laudable, right? It might still sound like a really sensible and good idea, but it's still not very interesting and nowhere near as attractive or compelling, as I used to find, as a bottle of Chablis. Right? So then what happens is we drink because we're feeling health doesn't matter so much. I've had a bad day. I need to relax. And so we drink, and then the next day we feel even more terrible. Because not only were we not able to do what we would have dubbed as being the right thing, right, which was in the moment, we should not have accepted the drink. We should have been able to turn the drink down. I mean, we're talking about our health, for goodness sakes, right? So we weren't able to do that. But now we've drunk again. I mean, maybe we drank a lot again last night. And so we further diminished our health and brought us further from our goal. And so many people tell me, and that does not make sense at all. But I'm going to explain today that it does make sense and how that kind of reaction is to be expected. Because it's all to do with how your primitive brain operates. It's pleasure-seeking. It doesn't care about future consequences, and it's fast. It works really quickly. So in that moment when you're feeling left out and resentful because you're not drinking, your primitive brain is going to seek relief, and it's going to seek it fast. Simply put, your long-term interest in your health is going to mean nothing to your primitive brain in that moment. It just wants to go out and play. wants to carry on doing the things that give it pleasure, such as drinking. But that's okay, because you also have a human brain, and your human brain does care about your health, right? This is the same part of your brain that decided on a drink plan, right? So your human brain is definitely a good ally to you when it comes to taking decisions, when it comes to taking action for the good of your health. But the thing is that your human brain reacts more slowly than your primitive brain. In that moment, when you're there, wanting the drink, it's kind of like a 100-meter sprint between your primitive and human brains. And your primitive brain is going to win the race every single time. It will win the race before your human brain is even out of the, what do they call it, out of the gate, right? Before it's even started running. And this is so important. And it's not because you're useless or broken or because there's something wrong with you. It's because your brain is operating as designed. The two bits of your brain work differently and care about different things. But that's okay, because you can use your human brain to manage your primitive brain and get ahead. Right? So we use our human brain to manage our emotions, because there is a difference between your health and being worried about your health, which is actually how I named this podcast, right? There are the facts of the situation, and then there are your stories, and this is an important distinction. There is knowing the actual state, the actual physical state of your body, how the component pieces are functioning, for instance, the status of your liver, your blood pressure readings, right, as in the facts and the figures, all the charts and the numbers. And then there is what you're making it all mean, in terms of what you make the actual readings and numbers mean, or what you make the absence of that information mean. I want to talk about this because I know a lot of you are concerned to go to the doctor about this stuff. I have spoken with more than a few of you who tell me you actually did go to the doctor about your alcohol consumption. You were looking for some guidance and actually ended up not only without any definite way forward, except, an admonishment to stick to the government's consumption guidelines, but you also get a note in your medical file about alcohol to boot, right? And yes, you've also told me that alcohol reference follows you around and is brought up at every subsequent appointment. So I get it. I get it that you may not want to go to the doctor about this. But I want you to consider how you will feel if you're faced with the numbers, right? The blood pressure readings and so on, the actual facts, or no numbers, right? Because even if we have no information at all, we have no idea of the state of our liver or our blood pressure or any of it, right? We know none of it. Our brains are going to make something of that lack of knowledge. And as we are prone to think in the negative, this means you're likely going to fill in the blanks with some worst case scenarios. Perhaps you've already done that. Right? Think about what happens then. So whether you know the actual facts of your physical situation or not, you're going to be imagining what they may or may not be, right? We just are. Our brains will fill in the blanks. So I want you to think about this, that there are the facts and then the stories. But I want you to notice that it's the stories, it's our opinions about the facts that have so much emotional heat. It's like the difference between saying something like, I drank so much last night, versus I drank 4 glasses of wine last night. Right? Or it could be compare the difference between my blood pressure is off the scale versus if you were to say my blood pressure is, such and such a reading. Very different feeling that we have to these different thoughts. Now, getting to the facts of the situation is really important. And it's the first thing I have people do when they tell me they're worried about their health. I have them look at the facts. Look at how much you're drinking, right? Look at whether you have any information from the doctor. So that's what I want you to start with. I want you to start with just establishing as many facts as you can. Put it down on paper. But I also want you to do a broader review of awareness of the facts. I want you to see how you're actually feeling physically. Because what I find is that we often use alcohol to dull ourselves, right? Or to make ourselves believe that we're feeling better than we actually are. But it's not until we reduce the alcohol intake that we realize not only that we feel so much better when we've got less of it in our system, but that we have no idea how bad we were feeling before. Right? We just didn't know because it had become the norm. Right? Things like waking up feeling not rested because we had lots of interrupted sleep, having maybe a dull headache, or just feeling a bit off. It's kind of like an ambient discomfort in our bodies that we get used to the more we drink, right? Year after year. It's kind of like our operating baseline, right? The norm. So it's good to get awareness of all of this so you know where you're starting. And then once you have that awareness, even if it means you're aware of how few actual facts you have about your physical health situation, I want you to consider going to the feeling of acceptance. Acceptance for where you currently are. Now, this is different to a cop-out. This is different to saying, look at me, I'm a hopeless case, I'm a hopeless situation. Right, just got to accept that. No, it's not what I'm saying. I want you to accept where you are as the truth of your life in this moment, because that gives us power to take action. I want you to consider, it's a bit like being in neutral gear in a car, right? You have options. You can go forward, you can go into first, second, third, fourth, or you can go into drive, right? If you've got an automatic car, you can go forward, you can reverse, you can go into park, or you can stay where you are in neutral. Right? And because when we're in acceptance, then we can separate the physical from the emotional feelings that we have. Right? We can separate what's happening physically with us versus what we're making it mean. Here's an example. Let's say you're big into skiing and then you go and break your leg at the very beginning of the ski season. Now, you can look at this as a situation of you've broken your leg and you're going to need to wait for it to fix. Maybe it hurts physically. Maybe you have to do certain things. You have to sit in a certain way. You obviously can't walk without crutches and so on. You can't drive. There's that kind of thing. You need to make some adaptations. And you may think that you're unlikely to be happy about that situation, especially if you're a keen skier. But if you accept the situation, that means you sort of get into being phlegmatic. I love that word. You kind of really accept where you are. You want to go skiing. Yep, you absolutely do, but it's just not possible. It's kind of like you can get to the place of, well, so what? Oh, so the next couple of months are going to look differently than I'd anticipated. So what? So there's that outcome that you can create for yourself when it comes to having a broken leg. But there's another outcome could easily go to, and that's when you resent your broken leg, right? So when you're angry about having broken your leg in the first place. Maybe you're telling yourself you're so stupid to have got into that situation, that you don't have time for this. What were you thinking, right? Maybe you're thinking it's the best snow for years and I'm just going to have to sit it out. I mean, what is going on here? And then maybe you're thinking what's going to happen in your life beyond skiing, right? How is this broken leg going to impact your overall life and what a nuisance it's going to be and all the arrangements you're going to have to figure out for the next couple of months while you're in plaster. Right, so we have the physical situation, which is the broken leg, and then we have your emotional reaction, the emotional suffering you layer around it, which is what you're making it mean. And they're not the same thing. But I want you to just consider, if you weren't feeling quite as hopeless or annoyed or fed up about your broken leg, even if it's just a little bit less, would that make the physical pain a little easier to bear? You certainly wouldn't enjoy the experience still, but you wouldn't be making the experience even more worse for yourself either, right? You'd be in the space of asking, well, what best serves me? And that's exactly the kind of situation we get into when you sit there fretting about your health when it comes to drinking. If you sit worrying about it, I bet you would build the most frantic outcomes and situations, right? What if this and what if that? I mean, they're all worst case scenarios. And that's just going to make you worry even more. You're going to worry it's gone too far. I should have paid attention to this much before. I mean, why am I only caring about my health now? But here's why it matters so much if you're doing this, and to notice if you're doing this. Because what do you typically do in response to feeling worried about anything? Right? Let's say you're worried about something. What would you typically do? Yeah, we would drink because we don't like feeling worried. We want to turn down the volume on the worry, at least until tomorrow, so we'll have a drink or two now. And so we end up doing the thing, which is drinking, that was causing our worry in the first place. And then we beat ourselves up about it. Yeah, just for good measure. And which, if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, you will know is something that just does not help. So what do you do when you can get to acceptance? Kind of what do you do next? Now, when I say accept your situation, I want to make it clear. I'm not saying you should just sit back and put your feet up, tell yourself there's nothing you can do about it. I'm also not saying that you should like where you are, but I want you to consider what action you will take if you're feeling acceptance, if you can indeed get to neutral, if you're operating from a less frazzled emotional state. One where you acknowledge your worry, but you don't let the worry be the emotion that drives you forward, because you have acceptance to do that instead. All right? And I want you to think about how you would act if you were taking action from the space of acceptance. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be easy, because this is where you need to be ready to identify what you're going to do today, to act intentionally and to commit to that, to be willing to not pick up the drink, to be willing to experience all the emotion you're feeling in the moment, all the deprivation, the anger, the frustration, the desire, all of it. That's the hard part, right? Feeling all of that stuff. But when you learn to manage your emotional health like this, well, that's when you have the keys to the universe. I teach you how to do this when it comes to transforming your relationship with alcohol. But when we do this work together, you will see very quickly that it applies across all areas of your life. And then you'll really start to see what you're capable of. Finally, whether you want to quit drinking entirely or to moderate your consumption, I want you to consider that deciding not to use alcohol to escape your life isn't just because it makes sense for your health and because you'll worry less about your health, but because your life will be so much better if you stop desiring something that gives you a net negative experience. Just consider this. Consider if you could translate your current desire you have for wine, into something else, into a desire to learn just what you're capable of in this one life you've been given. Thank you so much for listening. Please do rate and review and share it with someone you love. And if you want to get this struggle behind you, go to 90dayslater.co immediately and click on the book a call button. It gives you access to my calendar and you'll get a free time with me. We can see what's going on for you and I'll build the plan to help you get to where you want to be. It's magic. And it's available to you today. Okay, I'll see you next week. If you like what you're learning in the podcast and you want to take the work further and achieve total freedom around alcohol, let's talk. I help my clients stop reaching for that first glass of wine the moment 6 p.m. rolls around and they don't miss out on life. And we do it in 90 days. The effect is permanent. Email me for more information on anna@90dayslater.co. And if you did enjoy the show, I'd really appreciate if you'd leave a rating and review to help others find the 90 Days Later podcast.